Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my good buddy Marc Cordon. Say hi to everybody.
Hey everybody, good
Hey
to be here.
everybody.
Glenn, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Today is just a we're just gonna jump right in. I've got a special
Do
guest
it.
today who's someone I hold close to my heart as we're working on some project work together. A special project that we're working on has something to do around TEDx. But let me do this. You know, today is a conversation around following your voice.
Mm,
If you don't, as I've often said, when you don't follow your voice, you will get some messages from the universe that you're not on track. And it often comes with a subtle whisper, followed by a knock at the door. My dog's gonna start barking. Followed by if you don't pay attention to that, you get the baseball bat to the knees if you're not
yeah,
following the path. And if you're not paying attention to that baseball bat that comes around, well, then you're gonna get run over by a car, probably something
completely,
to get your
completely.
attention. And if you still don't pay attention, well, then maybe cancer, something like that can happen.
Yeah,
So we have to pay attention to the subtle messages, the subtle steering, the course corrections. Today's conversation is just a lot about that when we dig into your unique path and the work that you're up to in the world that's very powerful, and how you're serving others and helping people get their voice out there.
mm,
But I want to start back to your voice and
yeah,
how that evolved over time, and some of the, as I like to say, the messy process. uh,
yeah,
it's not just like had a pivotal moment and everything
yeah,
shifted and it was very clear. Sometimes we don't pay attention to the subtle messages, even the loud billboards we don't even listen to in our lives. But maybe Mark, sharing a little bit about what you're up to in the world these days, and then what I
yeah,
like to do is just drop back in time to what was it like growing up in your world,
yeah,
the some of those reference points and kind of leading up back to today. That's
yeah.
how.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I do. I'm a positive psychology coach, so when I work with my clients or organizations, we look at what's working first, and then I've been in this coaching content creation business for a greater part of 6 years. And if you don't know your voice, you're not going to get across on social media, TEDx's, your podcast. So a voice is integral, and it's not necessarily the voice box, the tongue. It really is you being able to start with what's inside and put it to the outside. I wouldn't say fearlessly, but very audaciously put it to the outside. Oftentimes the coach or the voice that we want is maybe a little bit timid. It's afraid to get rejected. That's a big thing about stepping on stages. People are fearful because they might get rejected. And so there's a whole bunch of things when it comes to the voice. I'm curious about you, Glenn. See, look, I'm used to being a podcaster. I want to just punt the question back to you. Tell me about what, tell me about your thoughts on voice, and I love the fact that we're just going with this rather than having a predetermined set of things to talk about. And we're working together when it comes to voice with you. So you talk to me about that.
As far as
Yeah, the story of you finding your voice, or where you're at with your voice right now. You're writing a book, you're putting yourself out there to the world. You have made a declaration to give a TEDx talk. All of those things to me feel like voice.
he
Why is that
he
important?
just put it out there now for everyone. I'm doing a TEDx talk.
Oh,
Just like that.
can
Just
I
like that.
not?
I'm like, I haven't told anybody yet.
Okay, we can edit that part out.
No, there's no editing here. So, but that sounds great.
Mm,
But as far as voice, for myself, it's sitting with the experiences I've had leading up till now, where I've often um, held privately
yeah,
side certain expressions of myself. It's like holding back your power. It's like I've got all this power that I'm already a big muscly 6'1" dude, and I often, as a coach for 3 decades, I hold space for others. And one of the uh edges for me is bringing the degree of fierceness and powerfulness, the energy that I bring. I often am a space holder. I
Mm.
help bring that compassionate, caring, loving space of safety for people to do their work. But at times I have to hold back what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing as truth, uh, and giving that when people are able to receive that, or when I'm able to plant those seeds for them. But there's a big part of me wants to actually live from a place where I can just bark it all out
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
take all the consequences.
It makes so much sense. And, when you brought up this whole idea of what voice looked like growing up, I mean, my parents moved from the Philippines. They didn't even know each other. They just left individually and ran into each other at a party, right? So a lot of the things that I was raised, and I don't know about you, Glenn, but like were ideas about collective voice, from an immigrant family. So it was almost like little Mark was being groomed to take over their business, to take over their jobs in healthcare. And so for the longest time, I didn't really have a say in that, or I didn't feel like I had a say. And if I rocked the boat too much, like any good collective, they'd threaten to throw me out, And so I didn't want that. I didn't want to be thrown out with the family. And so for the longest time, I didn't open my voice. I didn't say what I wanted to do. I just wanted to grow up, to be honest, Glenn. I was just like, man, here I am, this little kid that wants to be in a band when he grows up, which I did, but wants to be in a band. And I can't tell my parents that I don't want to be a doctor. And the thing was the more and more time that was taking place, the more and more unhealthy I was becoming. I don't think it's no random thing that the more and more I didn't want to become a doctor, I'd party more and drink so I wouldn't have to think about it. And by the time I actually spoke up to them, it was very defensive. um it, there was a fish thrown. I'm not going to say who threw the fish, but there was this whole piece about guilt and shame. I didn't know years later that my parents just wanted me to live without struggle like them. It wasn't about me being a doctor, but I had internalized this shit so much, Glenn, that I thought that I thought that I just needed to do what they did. I think the second thing that came up was me being in a band, and we played a lot of other people's songs for a long time, right? And I feel like this is kind of a metaphor for my life. In the band, we played a lot of cover songs. We played a lot of other people's songs. And soon, mimicry of other people, playing other people's music was no longer in integrity. I wanted to talk about what was going on with me, whether it be mental health, whether it be self-esteem, which wasn't too high.
Mhm.
And suddenly that voice came out that way. The one thing that I've noticed was that every time I came up and wanted to throw my voice out there, I was very much in a place where I was already angry. So I was like throwing it felt like I was throwing tantrums. And that went even to grad school. I was defending my prospectus, Glenn, and I was so angry that I had to write a prospectus about what they wanted that I like totally shaved the sides of my hair. I had this like last of the Mohicans pompadour. And again, there was that anger about like, I don't want to fucking do what you tell me to do. I have a voice. I want to write this. And at some point, I discovered positive psychology, which was the other thing. I would have a voice, but I didn't have to come at it angry anymore. I'm still editing my voice, but also at the same time, the place that I've come from, the multiple opportunities that I had to tell my voice has been projected, and I don't mind saying it, projected onto the business that I do. Clients who come in and desperately want to get their voice out to the world. They feel like they've got something big to share, and they just don't know how to put a finger on it. And so this whole idea of voice, I love the fact that we're talking about it, Glenn. I love it. And so part of the reason why you and I have become so close is your voice as well. I want to know what the story is behind your voice and why now.
Yeah, I think we all like to know that. I just, I just want, yeah, I just want to reiterate something you brought up first, which is the positive psychology is provided. What I'm hearing correctly is an outlet of expansiveness
Yeah.
versus kind of grappling with yourself. It's more
Yeah.
an opportunity to like, man, I've just been working with this all these years. Now it's like, what's the unknown terrain look like? Because when I expand in this direction of possibilities, infinite possibilities, wow, like maybe, I was just talking with a client earlier today, just around how, because I always tell people like, don't worry about the how to, just figure out what you want to do, figure out, get rigid with your outcome and be flexible in your approach and let
Yeah.
the how to show up. But it's even
So good.
more than that. It's even more than that, that there's a new, it's not even the old how to, like methods that you use, but a whole new landscape of how
Yeah.
to create that's wanting to come in.
Yeah.
And so if we can relinquish that at first and just cast a big vision that has juice to it, that we're inspired by, and then we go out knowing that life's going to work through us and start to
Hmm.
provide a different strategy, a different formula, a different way of
Yeah.
creating that hasn't been here yet. That's required for this thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that, does that ring true to you in the experience of
Yeah, it very much does. And this is a very interesting time to be talking about a voice because we're in the middle of cancel culture. So a lot of folks are like, if I say what I want to say, well, then a big group of people might try to make me invisible, you know? And I think now more than any time is a wonderful space has been devised that we don't have to talk about things that are countercultural or mainstream culture. We can really figure out what are the different nuances of growing up and talking about whatever it is that someone is interested in talking about. There's a lot of people who are like, man, I'm hearing a dominant story right now. What better time and place but to put your story out there, you know? There is a way for us to have controversy with civility, right? And so it doesn't need to be just this safe space that we're in 24/7. How the hell are we going to grow in a safe space? And I mean, you being a person that helps people holistically and helps them with sort of you know, the physical side of things. Can someone just grow muscle without tearing it? You know what I mean? That's controversial, you know, that's inflicting something onto your body. But if you want to get stronger, if you want to get leaner, there are some things that you have to do that don't, you know, that has to be a little bit different than just being in a safe space. You have to tear your muscle to get more
have to
muscle.
lean into those discomforting places. We have
Absolutely.
to lean into those edges. We have to experience, like you said, those small tears. And I always tell people, give yourself permission to confront something when it occurs,
Yeah.
and give yourself permission to be messy. Meaning, like, I'm gonna go and say what I need to say, and it's gonna come out messy, and I give myself permission to clean it up afterwards.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Versus
And I
I
think,
hold that and I spin on that. It's
yeah,
not that every thought needs to be entertained. It's not that every emotion needs to be entertained, but there should be some way, at least you know how to articulate it within yourself first.
yeah,
And then how will I communicate that out in the world? It's in the listening for the audience I want to reach with that message, and be unattached. And then
completely.
and maybe invisibility with some groups is okay, because you're
Yeah,
because you're becoming visible to new ones, or,
completely.
or
And
you're coming more loyal to the message, and then the
yeah,
people that it resonates with, which is within them. So then you're just
yeah,
speaking truth, and it's unadulterated. And maybe that's the next flip of this cancel culture, is it's going towards that direction where,
yeah.
at some point we're all going to be able to read each other's minds, because we're going to be so good at reading each other's facial expressions and body language and energy, that everyone's just going to like, oh, that doesn't seem accurate.
And who knows what's going to happen with the metaverse stuff, right? We might actually be able to read people's minds. One of the things that I hear you talking about is curiosity, in the power of curiosity, rather than shutting yourself off to someone else's story, rather than saying this person is too different from myself. You could go and lean in with curiosity and be like, hey, I don't have any kind of traction with understanding your story, but I want to hear a little bit more. And that would create a condition conducive for people to tell their own story, for people to understand that there are some of the things that are vulnerable, but I can also be in a place where it's safe yet controversial and get my point out there, you know.
Have you had some experiences in your life, examples maybe you might be able to share with our audience, just where you've seen this theory work, whether it's been magical or?
Yeah, well, I have to call myself out, you know. I've been, and I still, I'm not saying that I'm devoid of it, but I've been that person who's just like, this motherfucker's a racist. I don't want to get to know them. You know, they're saying some ignorant stuff.
Okay.
Or being a person where, okay, here's one example. So as I was growing up, I always thought that I was the weird kid, right? Black or white school, Asian dude. Where does he fall? The butt of a lot of people's jokes, because people couldn't figure me out. I couldn't figure myself out. When I went to college, I was angry, and I did not want to be around white people, black people. No one, I didn't want to be around anyone except for other Filipino Americans. And I shut my curiosity down in a place and time where I should have been reaching out to more people. I should have made myself open to other groups. I should have leaned into discomfort, right? But I didn't. I went through a lot of scenarios where when I found other Asian Americans or Filipino, boom, closed, don't want to talk to anybody else, right?
And that was the time. I mean, I had a lot of Filipino friends and Asian friends, different backgrounds, that that's just the way it rolled. You know, I mingled with those groups, but they had these tight knit communities.
Yeah, so were you like the honorary white guy?
Yeah,
Glenn, I love it.
You'd be either with, or my Afghani friends. I go to there, there's like, oh shit, I just inherited a giant family, and I'm gonna, it's like sensory overload of the smells in the house, of the food, and
it's awesome.
It's like everybody's got a drum set,
it's awesome.
a musical, and I'm the token white guy.
You're the token. I love it. But it wasn't until years later that I felt comfortable to ask curiously. You know that I have my podcast, the Golden Mike podcast, is out. I've never said this on anyone's shows. The reason why I started that was because of the fact that I felt like I could be that curious guy that I wasn't in college. I could engage with somebody and literally have sort of this lunch and learn with a person who I've never met before. And I get to create something with them, collaborate something with them over 60 minutes, as well as learn something. I consider what I'm doing in my podcast my personal learning space. And it's fun. It's great. I hope that the audience likes it, but it really is that Mark, in an 18-year-old, 19-year-old Mark, trying to relive the opportunities that I missed. I mean, the amount of people that I would have been able to have learned from in college, I get to redo it here. And that's really what I like. Also, a reason why I do the podcast is I want to see people's voice. You got to have a voice when you come on my show, so it's a little bit of each. I get to empower somebody to tell their story unadulterated, with no judgment. And I also get to learn something. And the past 2 weeks, you and I have been talking a lot about spirituality, and that show, and empowering others to tell their story, creating space like you talk about, is really spiritual for me. It's bigger than Mark. It's bigger than myself. And every time I get on, whether it be, a 3-hour show, a 15-minute show, I feel connected. So to me, that's my spiritual growth as well. What you writing, homie?
Well, I'm always taking notes down on things, but one thing that really stands out from our conversation thus far is just hitting on you're familiar with my Coachable Coach series where I go out and do these crazy adventures, and it's much bigger than myself in
It's
that
amazing.
I'm going out and doing, whether I'm learning Latin dance or climbing crazy mountains or skydiving, I'm really living out those opportunities missed. That's voice.
It is. Yep.
That's what voice is. That's the embodiment. That's the energy that's flowing through. It's like aligning with this truth. Like, I got to go do this scary thing.
Yeah.
I gotta do this
Yeah.
thing that I told myself wasn't for me, was for these other folks. And now it's like, well, I got so much more time left here. Like, I got to get busy living, get busy getting after, all those things that I just said, that's not for me. I'm in this box.
Yeah.
Who said that? I said that. I said that at one point. That's not for me. That's, now it's more like, I don't have to be extraordinary at these things, but I want to go do extraordinary things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the curiosity, man. And I think that's what I love about you, Glenn, is as long as we've been talking, there is this natural curiosity that you have. And also the vulnerability to put yourself in places where it's like 6'2" white guy learning salsa. I got to see your video the other day. I'm like, look at this cat. Look at this cat doing his thing. I also like the fact that, going to the positive psychology and voice piece for a second, there's multiple places, multiple things that bring happiness. And I see you in a place of joy, one person went and said, well, one form of happiness is that you got to do the things that bring you happiness, literally jumping out of a plane, feeling the endorphin rush, those sort of things. A long time ago, someone went and said, yeah, that's a form of happiness, right? After that, another person came back and said, absolutely effing not. That is not happiness. Happiness is living a purposeful, meaningful life, right? And so in terms of the thing about being able to be in a positive psychology space, I get to go and look at the research and then be like, no, happiness is both of those things. Actually, a dude named Corey Keyes went and put those things together. And so true happiness, true voice comes from the fact that you're living in your full meaning, and it also brings you the endorphin rush. It's not one or the other, it's both. Too many endorphin rushes, you might be left there saying like, okay, I jumped out of a plane, I had sex with 50 women, ate some grapes, all those sort of things. Too much of that, a person is left saying, I'm settling for a life less than what I know it is. And as a result, the person goes and says, there's got to be more to life than this. Does that make sense, Glenn? You know what I mean? But then someone who's like in their meaning. And so, for example, I saw this a lot in higher education. Person knew that they wanted to become a doctor. They pulled all-nighters all the time. They didn't eat well. They didn't hang out with their dorm room buddies. They didn't go out to the parties. They didn't go on Facebook. There was no connection, and them just wanting to do meaningful things. And so Corey Keyes calls this striving, and the unhealthy form of striving, right? You're left at the end of the day saying, there's got to be more to life than this. There's got to be more to life than me and my book and test taking. And so that's what I really love about the power of voice, is once you locate that voice, you are no longer settling, you are no longer striving, but you're in a place where you're in the pocket and you know exactly what you stand for. So again, you talk about learning moments. Learning moments for me was me playing around with, oh my God, I'm not happy. I'm not happy. I don't want to be a doctor. Oh my gosh, like all I want to do is hang out with my buddies and drink. Again, that form of happiness was not enough. And so to come in here and speak from a place of storytelling, a place of voice, it's my dream come true. I wouldn't have it any other way. And not everybody would want what I have, but I've got it. And I feel happy for now. I feel like I'm flourishing for now, but I also have to keep in mind that those things might change at any given point. Anything landing with you?
Yeah. And they will.
Yeah, right. Is there anything landing with you, like in terms of your own life, when it comes to like the different types of happiness, the striving or the settling?
Yeah, for myself, my experience is, I've experienced life of suffering. You go to the gym, you break a sweat, you eat you're more disciplined with your food, and your body looks and feels amazing, and or you get your pleasure principle a little bit too out of whack, and then you're like, oh, I enjoyed all these pleasurable things, but now I have the suffering, the pain of have being a little too much in my comfort zone.
Completely.
When I've climbed big mountains, it's like, hiking, climbing, anything, you're suffering. It's hard work to reach those pinnacles.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this, and I talk about this in my new book, Amplify. It's just you only get a few moments at the big table, when you accomplish. When I climbed to the top of Devil's Tower, I drank some water, I signed the book, I took some photos, and then I was like, I want to get out of these uncomfortable shoes we've been in all day. The sun's beating down us. We're in the heat of the day in the middle of summer. I still got to climb down. And then, I got to the bottom, went and got a nice, yummy cheeseburger and one of those
Yeah, that's my boy.
ice cream Snicker bars. And
That's what I'm talking about.
And then I'm like, but I ain't eating a double, I ain't a cheeseburger and a Snicker bar tomorrow. It's like,
Yeah.
back to training.
Yeah. Gets too,
like that, then your pleasure principle is out of whack, your ratio there. So it was, in my experience of life, is there's a lot of suffering that's required of us. Happiness, I don't know, happiness, I feel, is a fleeting thing, like any emotion. It's here for a moment, and the next one's coming, and so you relish, be present, and appreciate. I've had moments when you're welled up with tears and moaning, and then all of a sudden that song comes on, and now you're like, I'm back.
Yeah, completely.
From outer space,
Yeah, I love it.
A Return of the Mac, whatever it is. The whole thing is that it's all fleeting. It's all, momentary. We can't really be attached to these things. We can appreciate these things, but we should also appreciate, the suffering. Appreciate,
Absolutely.
It's not about just hurrying through the workout to get to the good stuff. It's like, let me just be here now in the workout and feel the pain, feel the grind. Feel the monotony. Sometimes I do workouts that are boring cardio, where you're going into low intensity, and like the hardest thing about it is just doing something really boring. You're like, I gotta put on an audiobook, or I gotta just be here now and just be with what's occurring now. But that's the practice of just sitting with what's unfolding moment by moment, and letting the moment kind of guide you, and not be so holding on tightly to an emotion that just occurred, because it's moving on. It's rising, and everything in the universe is all waves. So the energy wave is rising and falling, diminishing, and another wave is coming and going. So we're all coming and going. Everything's
completely
coming.
Stagnation to me is death. To be stagnant is.
How can we be surfers? How can we be better surfers? How can we learn how to ride waves better, and let go, and surrender a little bit more to life? Has been something that I've come into more as I've matured from a first stage of life of a lot of efforting. And I still put effort forth with things, but there's a matching with the efforting, with surrendering to. It's almost like, like you put forth a significant amount of effort with something, and then you need to go from this fight here to letting go. And in that vacuum of what you've been putting out there, that energy vibration, that creative power, it's like it's met by the universe, and say, hey, I'm going to come in and match that. You're putting this kind of energy out here, so you've created space now for the universe to do its part. God, source, however you want to call it. But it's not all this, and it's not all draw on your whiteboard and kumbaya. Everything just like manifesting, like the movie The Secret kind of tried to promote. It's a lot different. It's I write on my whiteboard what I want to create, and then I take clear, sequential, massive action steps to create those things. And I have a flexibility in my approach with things. and pay attention to what's wanting to happen, so I
Yeah.
don't miss the opportunities or miss the little subtle nudges of oh, I need to make these adjustments as we
Yeah.
fail our way into success.
Completely.
So that's kind of something that resonates as a deeper truth for me in my experience, a visceral
Yeah.
embodied understanding of how life works. So we have to have that, yeah, it's a delicate balance of what are we, projecting onto life,
Yeah.
and can we sit in a place of like, hey, this is all happening for me, even if I don't like this
Yeah.
particular current outcome or sequence. But this is the part where I have to like let go now and
Hmm.
say, okay, well, this is what's showing up. So it is what it is. So how can I have loving acceptance for what is,
Completely.
versus just trying to tolerate things, but actually,
Completely. Well, there's so many, oh, so beautiful what you just said. And there's so many things like I'm lighting up in a whole bunch of areas, but maybe I could talk to you about some of the most salient things that I'm hearing, earlier on, I heard you talking about separating pain from suffering, right? Because sometimes when it comes to growing your body or mentally up leveling, there will be pain there, but the choice is not to feel suffering. It's going to be over pretty soon. This needs to happen for you to grow. Because if you don't, the happiness that happens is it's toxic positivity, or when it comes to spirituality, it's spiritual bypassing. You're
right.
not willing to do the frickin' work. And just because something might bliss you out doesn't mean you need to stay there. Like the only time where you should be happy 24/7 is if you're dead or if you're a psychopath. The rest of it is to deal with, to learn the ups, downs, and all arounds like you're talking about. Maybe it's not balancing things as much as it is managing the imbalance of our lives, being able to work together like what we're doing now. You being in my life helps me manage my own imbalance, um, and I guess two other things that I heard. It's not all about, again, it's not all about the happiness like you were talking about, but really maybe it's more about the emotional diversity. Because if you don't do the work, yes, the happy feels great, but when you're really in a shitty place or feeling hopeless, you don't, you're not prepared for the hopeless part. You're only prepared for the happy parts. And I don't think that's not healthy. You're either dead or you're a psychopath, right? And one of the things last that I heard from you is this idea that looking too much at our colleagues and what they're doing for themselves can really set ourselves up to fall into a comparison trap where we're never going to be good enough for one person, or well, this person's TEDx talk is so much better than mine. Mine is complete shit. Where really what the place is like clean up this comparison game and really start moving forward with, like you're talking about, with voice, with your authentic place. So I don't know if I hit any of those, but that's what I feel like you've
Yeah,
been
and
talking about.
yeah, and I'm curious how you show up when you're working, maybe sharing a little bit, I guess, now about how, what you're up to in the world these days with TEDx,
Mm.
and having been a successful TEDx presenter. How, I guess, relaying that back, so how you show up and serve others with their voice, having been on that stage and having to arrive at that place where you've experienced the benefits in your world, in your life, how transformative that whole process was, and other things leading up to it, of course. But
Yeah.
how are you, what's driving you, I guess, to show up with these other folks
Great question.
and
Great question. I believe it was Emerson who went and said that the majority of people, and this is not word for word, but the majority of people are in quiet desperation. They're living lives where they're just like, there's got to be more to life than this, right? When I saw that quote, that's where I needed to go and say, this is not tolerable anymore. I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm scared as shit, but I'm going to put myself out there because I can't live like this anymore. I can't live in quiet desperation. I'm tired of bullshitting. I'm tired of, I'm tired of wearing my coat and tie every single day thinking I'm successful when I go home and I feel lonely. And so it was really starting from there and then honoring the fact that where does this voice need to show up? Well, it needs to show up when I look in the mirror every morning and before I go to bed at night, but
So
also at the same.
let me add one thing to this.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Just want, I want to interrupt your thought process here, but that's my experience with clients. When I often have to tell someone come back and see me in 6 months, you're not ready to do the work. Because if they haven't had that conversation in the mirror with themselves, I mean, who am I to influence you? You need to influence yourself to say enough's enough. Like the conversation of like, it's so intolerable in my life right now. This okay life is a frying pan, and I'm dying in this, and I have to go do something scary right now. I've got to do my scary, crazy idea now.
Completely.
And until that, no one can help you.
Completely.
And that means that whole period's necessary. The shitstorm you've been through has been for you, to serve you, to help you go, okay, I got enough underneath me now to move. Like, my soul's not being fed now. The superficial version of me is fed, but that's not the whole picture here.
Yeah, that's not the part of me that's awake. Excuse me. That's not the part of me that's awake at the end of the night when all these things are all these thoughts are keeping me awake, What I really like what you're talking about there, Glenn, is, hey, we as coaches, as trainers, can provide the challenge. We can provide the support, which is what we need to do. But you cannot receive those until you're ready, until you say to yourself that I'm freaking ready. And for me, the pain of staying put was way deeper than the pain of changing. And so it was easy for me to change into that. I thought that I'd be super scared, which I was, but it was worse for me to have regrets. My dad was at a point where he was beginning to forget his memories. I was at a point where I wasn't completely fulfilled, and I didn't want to say it to anybody, but people knew it at work. And so all of those things added up to, I'm ready to change. Now, with my fear, I needed to hire a coach because I didn't know what I needed to do. Things that were objective were subjective for me. I didn't know where to go. And so that coach, which is different than therapy, that coach would go and say, this is where you are. You just made a declaration about your voice and that you want your voice on a TEDx stage. And it felt very much like taking everything that I had and throwing it over the fence and saying, that's where my TEDx is. I need to find a way to get over to the other side. This is what I know that I can teach. I have to throw my knapsack over that wall and know that it's going to be uncomfortable, but I need to get to that other place. Quiet desperation was probably the worst thing that I ever felt, because like day by day, I felt it rotting. I felt myself being like, I'm not in full power. All I can think about is a lack mindset, a poverty mindset, not just with my income, but with everything. And I lost a lot of confidence. And so for me to have hired a coach at the time that I did, there was a lot of muck, but they kind of were like when I was like crossing the fence, they were kind of like the person that like pushed my ass over the other side. And so I praise anybody who can get to the other side. I'm just using an I statement. I needed that assistance. I needed the Sherpa who could get me to the top of the mountain. And it's just an honor now to work with people's voices now. It's really cool.
I love that. I can just picturing that sack being thrown over and the Sherpa going like, oh shit. He's like, okay, I got all this, all of you. And like you're in because you threw your sack over here. It's like my job is to get you over here now. Like you threw your sack in over the big wall, and it's like quiet desperation. is
Hmm.
no longer a haven for it. It's no longer, it's like, it's gonna burn, it's all burning down the moment you threw that to the wind and said, and you casted your line out and
Yeah.
saying, I always tell you, I'm always nervous to complain about anything. As soon as I
Right.
complain about something, that it's a hidden request. It's a hidden request sent out to the universe.
Yeah.
All the energy, all the vast connectiveness.
Yeah.
But this ain't working anymore. And it's like the universe is
No,
like, fine, we'll burn that shit to the ground for you, and we'll
completely.
create space for
Completely.
something new.
Yeah, they will totally burn the boats, and here I am on that island trying to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Um, I, I'm not devoid of failures, and so I'm not here to be like, you hire a coach and you have a Coke and a smile and you'll be fine. Work is work. And there are days where I question certain things, but overall, every single place that I threw my knapsack, I've been able to get to the other side, at least up until the point of recording this podcast with you. But I need that challenge and support, and I have declared my readiness. I am ready. I don't think that it's a random happenstance that Glenn, you and I have connected. I feel like we can push each other over to that other side. It just doesn't have to be one way. I know certain things about myself that you can identify that can help me to the other side. And I feel like I can help you as well with your readiness, and I think that's
Well,
one of the best things you can ask for.
I appreciate that, and I feel that, and I'm wondering if you could speak that to an audience that's just hanging out here and they're like, got my knapsack.
Hmm.
There's some Sherpa dude over there on the other side that I need to find out a little more information about him, about how to get a hold of him, what's his, like, I got a feel of this guy, but what's the jam, like, what's this jam that he does all day long, but like nobody else, and that he's my guy. If folks
Yeah.
like help express to those stalkers out there that want to look you up in the middle of the night, how they get a hold of you, what you're offering right now. We haven't really clarified that yet, and I know as we wrap up the call here, I just want people to have a better understanding of what your mission is, what you're doing in the world right now. I've sat in on witnessing incredible group of folks that are preparing for their TED Talks. There's a lot of things that you do incredibly well, but maybe we can just hone in on a couple things that you are powerfully committed to these days, and we can get people at least to the next pit stop. Maybe it's the smaller wall before the big
Yeah,
wall.
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, I think anyone listening to this, if you have a sheet of paper in front of you or just want to do this into your mind, think about 4 different circles, right? The first circle is, what is the thing that brings you pleasure? And I'll get to the content stuff. What is it that brings you pleasure? The second question is, what brings you meaning and purpose? The next one is, what is it that if you didn't get paid to do anything that lights you up, and you even go out of your way to do it, what lights you up? And then the fourth thing is, what do other people come to you for and see you as an expert in, right? Brings you pleasure, brings you meaning, what lights you up, and what do other people come and ask you about, your expertise. When all 4 of those things come together, that's where you can have a declaration and say, this is what I stand for. Or I like to call it your joy revolution. This is the place that brings you happiness, and you move from there. Now, when it comes to my clients, I start with the joy revolution or the declaration. Let's throw that shit over to the other side of the wall, right? Your joy revolution, your calling, and I'll help you get there. And this is where I help people work on that joy revolution to manifest it, is in TEDx's, podcasts, books, and digital academies for now. And those 4 things, once you kind of figure out your joy revolution, the rest is just marching orders. This is how we're going to get your book out there. This is how we're going to get your TEDx out there. This is how we're going to have you apply. And when you do something like that, on a TEDx, you very quickly let people know what you stand for. You do too many things, you're too generalized. No one gives a crap. You do things that are just pertinent to you, you're going to have a hard time winning folks over. So that is where we start. We start with the joy revolution. And so anybody who's listening right now, what is it that you have and you want to lead with? What is it that lights you up, you know? And so all of those things, all of the content creation isn't from a place of getting you likes or likes or all these glamorous statistics. It's about you affecting people and affecting people in an amazing way. And this is going to be my final thing. A lot of people can lead and create change through fear and anger. The joy revolution stuff is we're going to use emotions to create change in you and in this society or organizations. And you're going to do it through joy and happiness without the toxic positivity stuff. So I hope that that answered the question.
Yeah. And then what's the web address for people to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
social media, anything. Yeah.
Yeah. If you go to marccordon.com, you can just get in touch with me there, marccordon.com. And I also got my book up there, Beyond Resilient. So I'd love for you guys to download it, book.marccordon.com. It's Beyond Resilient. You don't have to pay for it. And it has all of those concepts in there for you to figure out what your revolution is, and then have the marching orders to carry that out. So
I love it. I love it. Hey, Marc, thank you so much for being on this podcast today. I really appreciate you having you. We'll have to invite you back again for.
I would love to come back, and I want you to come on my show too.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll be there for sure.
You're awesome, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you took some notes down. I took a couple pages of notes here myself. Again, appreciate my guests. I appreciate everyone for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.